The chamber was enormous. Daniel Porter had seen photographs and holographic recordings, but nothing could prepare him for the real thing. The council hall of Velar Prime stretched upward for nearly a mile, its walls carved from living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. Thousands of seats rose in circular tiers around a central podium, and in those seats sat representatives from over 100 alien species. Some had scales, some had feathers. Some were made of pure energy contained in mechanical shells. All of them were watching him. Daniel adjusted his simple gray uniform and walked toward the podium. Behind him came Kate, a tall woman with sharp eyes and steady hands, and Sam, a quiet man who understood alien technology better than anyone else on Earth. They were the first human delegation to address the full Galactic Council. The walk to the podium took 3 full minutes. Daniel could hear whispers in languages he did not understand. He could feel the weight of alien eyes studying him like scientists examining a curious insect. When he finally reached the central platform, he took a deep breath and looked up at the High Arbiter. Was a being made of crystal. His body stood 12 feet tall and caught the light in ways that hurt human eyes. He was ancient by any standard, having served as High Arbiter for over 3,000 years. His voice rang out like a bell struck in an empty cathedral. The Council recognizes the delegation from the planet Earth. You may speak. Daniel cleared his throat. High Arbiter, distinguished representatives, on behalf of the United Earth Government, I thank you for this opportunity. Humanity has known of the Galactic Confederation for 60 years. In that time, we have watched and learned. We have studied your cultures, your technologies, your histories. We come before you today with a simple request. We wish to join the Confederation as full members. The silence that followed was almost physical. Daniel could see alien faces turning toward each other. He could see appendages and tentacles gesturing in what might have been surprise or amusement. Then, from somewhere in the upper tiers, came a sound that needed no translation. Laughter. It started small, just a few clicking noises from a delegation of beings, but it spread quickly. The made sounds like wind chimes in a storm. The massive creatures with 4 arms and hide like stone produced deep rumbling chuckles. Even the energy beings flickered in patterns that suggested humor. Within moments, the entire chamber was laughing at the human delegation. Daniel stood perfectly still. Beside him, Kate's hands formed tight fists at her sides, but she did not move. Sam simply watched, his face showing nothing. High Arbiter raised one crystalline hand, and the laughter slowly died. He leaned forward, and Daniel could see something that might have been pity in those faceted eyes. Ambassador Porter, the Council has reviewed your species extensively. Your world is 4.5 billion years old, yet your species has existed for only 200,000 years. You developed space travel less than 2 centuries ago. Your fastest ships take months to cross distances that our vessels cover in hours. You have no planetary defense grid, no psionic capabilities, no genetic modification programs. Your soldiers still carry chemical projectile weapons. Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but continued. Furthermore, your species is remarkably fragile. You require constant atmospheric pressure, specific temperature ranges, regular intake of water and organic matter, and extended periods of unconsciousness that you call sleep. A child could survive conditions that would kill your strongest warrior in minutes. More laughter rippled through the chamber. A delegate from the collective, a species known for their telepathic abilities, projected an image that all present could see. It showed a human struggling to lift a weight that an infant could move with telekinesis alone. The mockery was not subtle. Kate stepped forward slightly. High Arbiter, if I may. Tilted his head. You may speak. You list our weaknesses as if they define us, but survival is not about strength alone. It is about adaptation. Our species has survived ice ages, plagues, asteroid impacts, and countless wars against ourselves. We have walked on our moon and sent machines to other stars. Everything we have achieved, we have achieved without help from the Confederation. We are not asking you to give us anything. We are asking for the opportunity to prove what we can offer." The Arbiter made a sound that might have been a sigh. "Commander, what could you possibly offer the Confederation? We have mapped the galaxy. We have conquered disease and death. We have built structures that will outlast your sun. Your species has nothing we need and nothing we want." Sam spoke for the first time. His voice was soft, almost gentle. "Perhaps that is true today. Perhaps we have nothing you want right now. But the universe has a way of changing things. And when it does, you might find that the species you dismiss today has qualities you never considered." Stared at the humans for a long moment. Then he straightened and addressed the full council. "The matter is decided. Humanity is granted provisional observer status within the Galactic Confederation. You may attend council sessions but may not vote. You may trade with member species but may not access restricted technologies. This status will be reviewed in one standard century. The delegation is dismissed." Daniel bowed his head slightly. "We thank the council for its consideration." As the three humans turned and began the long walk back to the chamber doors, the laughter returned. This time it was louder, more open, without any pretense of courtesy. Daniel heard comments in translated alien tongues: primitives, children, insects. The words followed them like shadows. When they finally stepped through the massive doors and into the corridor beyond, Kate let out a breath she had been holding for what seemed like hours. "That was humiliating," she said quietly. Daniel kept walking, his face calm. "It was expected." Sam fell into step beside them. "They showed us exactly what they think of us. Every weakness, every limitation, every reason they believe we are inferior. They put it all on display." Kate looked at him. "And that helps us how?" Daniel stopped walking. He turned to face his companions, and for the first time a small smile crossed his face. "Because now we know exactly what they see when they look at us. And more importantly, we know what they do not see. They do not see the ships we have hidden in the asteroid belt. They do not see the soldiers we have trained for decades. They do not see the weapons we have built in secret facilities on moons they have never bothered to scan." He started walking again. "They laughed at us today. Let them laugh. In time, they will learn that the quiet ones are always the most dangerous." Kate and Sam exchanged glances. Then they followed their ambassador down the corridor, leaving the sound of alien laughter far behind them. The first phase was complete. Now the real work could begin. 6,000 feet beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Lisa Warren stood before a wall of screens that showed the true face of human civilization. This was the command center for Project Silence, a facility that did not exist in any official record. The men and women who worked here had been erased from public databases. Their families believed they were dead. The world above had no idea this place was real. Lisa was 53 years old with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much. She had served in 3 wars before joining this project, and she understood better than most what humanity faced. The Confederation viewed Earth as a primitive backwater, a young species barely worth noticing. That misconception was about to become their greatest weapon. General Chris Blake walked up beside her. He was a large man with a face and hands that had once strangled a man in combat. Now those hands held a tablet showing fleet deployment reports. "The delegation returned from Velar Prime 6 hours ago," he said. "Ambassador Porter's report confirms what we expected. They see us as children." Lisa nodded slowly. "Good, let them keep seeing that." A door opened behind them and Maria Santos entered the room. She was the director of intelligence, a small woman with dark hair and a mind sharp enough to cut steel. Behind her came Doctor, the chief scientist of the Fleet Development Program. "The latest intelligence is troubling," Maria said without greeting. She walked to a console and pulled up a star map. Red markers spread across one section of the galaxy like a disease. Our deep space probes have been tracking movement in the void between galaxies. The hollow is closer than anyone realizes. Chris leaned forward. How close? 18 months, maybe less. The room went quiet. Everyone present knew about the hollow. They were an extragalactic swarm, billions of biomechanical creatures that consumed everything in their path. They had destroyed entire civilizations in other galaxies before turning their attention to this one. The Confederation had known about them for centuries, but had hidden the truth from most of their own citizens. "Does the Council know the timeline?" Lisa asked. Maria nodded. "They know. They are preparing in secret, gathering their fleets, stockpiling resources, but they are not telling anyone else. When the hollow arrives, most species will be caught completely off guard." Lisa turned to face the screens again. They showed human ships hidden in places the Confederation had never thought to look. Carriers disguised as asteroids. Destroyers parked in the shadow of gas giants. Thousands of vessels built over 60 years, each one more advanced than anything the Confederation believed humanity possessed. "Then we move forward with Phase 2, she said. "What is the status of the fleet?" Doctor stepped forward. He was an older man with white hair and tired eyes, but his voice was steady. 312 vessels fully operational, another 80 in final construction, all equipped with stealth systems that make them invisible to Confederation sensors, all armed with weapons we developed from first principles, not stolen or technology. "The troops," Lisa looked at Chris. 40,000 Marines trained specifically for this enemy. Each one has spent the last 5 years studying hollow biology, tactics, and weaknesses. They know how to kill these things better than anyone in the Confederation. Lisa walked to the center of the room and looked at each person in turn. 60 years ago, when the Confederation first made contact with Earth, our leaders made a decision. They saw how the galaxy worked. The strong dominated the weak. The loud crushed the quiet. Primitive species were exploited until they had nothing left to give. She paused, so they decided to be quiet. They showed the Confederation exactly what they expected to see: primitive rockets, slow ships, weak weapons, and all the while in secret we built something different, something better. Maria pulled up another display. Every technological advancement of the last 60 years has been carefully managed. Our public space program moves at a pace that keeps the Confederation comfortable. They scan our ships and see exactly what they expect. Meanwhile, our real fleet operates in complete darkness. Chris crossed his arms. "The question is timing. Do we reveal ourselves now and risk losing the element of surprise? Or do we wait until the hollow arrives and the Confederation is desperate?" Lisa had thought about this question for years. She had lost sleep over it. She had argued with politicians and generals and scientists, but the answer had always been clear. "We wait," she said. "When the hollow comes, every species in this galaxy will face extinction. The Confederation will throw everything they have at this enemy, and it will not be enough. Their fleets will fall. Their worlds will burn. And when all hope seems lost, when even the High Arbiter himself believes the end has come, that is when humanity will step forward." "And then what?" asked quietly. Lisa looked at the screens showing the hidden fleet, the soldiers training in silence, the weapons waiting to be used. "Then we save them, not for glory, not for revenge, not to conquer or control. We save them because that is who we are. And when it is over, when the hollow is destroyed and the Confederation still stands, they will know the truth about humanity. They will know that the quiet ones are not weak. They will know that the species they laughed at was preparing to save their lives." Maria stepped closer. "And if they still reject us afterward, if they see our power and decide we are a threat?" Lisa smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Then they will have learned something important. They will have learned that humanity does not ask for respect. We earn it. And we do not need anyone's permission to be exactly what we are." The room fell silent. Everyone present understood the weight of what was coming. For 60 years, humanity had hidden in plain sight, pretending to be less than they were. Now the moment of truth was approaching. When the darkness came, humanity would answer, not with boasts or threats or demands. They would answer with action. They would answer with sacrifice. They would answer in complete silence. Chris Blake straightened and looked at his admiral. "What are your orders?" Lisa turned back to the screens. "Continue training, continue building, and continue watching. When the time comes, we will be ready." She touched a panel, and the displays shifted to show the edge of the galaxy, where something vast and terrible was slowly drawing closer. The Hollow did not know that humanity existed. The Confederation did not know what humanity had become. Both of them were about to find out. "We have waited 60 years, Lisa said softly. "We can wait a little longer." Above them, on the surface of the Earth, life continued as normal. People went to work. Children went to school. The sun rose and set without anyone knowing what waited in the darkness below. Humanity kept its secrets well, and in the silence beneath the mountains, the true defenders of Earth prepared for a war that would change everything. The first world to fall was called Seven. It was a colony of the hegemony, home to 2 billion crystalline beings who had lived there for 10,000 years. They had built cities that touched the clouds and monuments that captured starlight in ways that made visitors weep with beauty. On a Tuesday morning by Earth time, the Hollow arrived and turned it all to ash. There was no warning. The swarm appeared from the darkness between stars like a wave of living shadow. Billions of creatures, each one a nightmare of metal and flesh twisted together, descended upon the planet with hunger that could not be reasoned with. The planetary defense grid lasted 11 minutes. The evacuation ships that tried to flee were caught and torn apart. By the time word reached the Galactic Council, Seven was already dead. High Arbiter received the news in his private chambers. For the first time in 3,000 years, his crystalline hands trembled. "How many ships?" he asked. His aide, a young named, could barely speak. "Millions, perhaps billions. Our sensors cannot count them all. They move as one, like a single organism made of countless parts." Closed his eyes. The council had known this day would come. They had prepared in secret, hiding the truth from the public to prevent panic. But all their preparations, all their hidden fleets and emergency protocols, suddenly seemed small against the scale of what was coming. "Alert all member species," he commanded. "Full military mobilization. This is no longer a secret we can keep." Across the galaxy, the truth spread like wildfire. The Hollow was here. The ancient enemy from beyond the stars had finally arrived, and nothing in the Confederation was ready. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Warren watched the reports come in with a heavy heart. She stood in the command center surrounded by her officers, each screen showing a different horror. Seven was just the beginning. Within a week, 6 more worlds had fallen. The Hollow did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They simply consumed everything in their path and moved on to the next target. "They are moving faster than our projections," Maria Santos said quietly. "At this rate, they will reach the core systems within 8 months. Chris Blake studied the tactical displays. "The Confederation is responding poorly. Every species is protecting its own territory instead of coordinating. They are fighting alone. They have retreated behind their psionic barriers. They are fortifying there and refusing to send ships anywhere else." Lisa nodded slowly. "Fear makes people selfish. They think that if they hide, the Hollow will pass them by. They do not understand that this enemy will not stop until everything is gone." Doctor entered the room with new data. "Our probes are tracking the swarm's movement patterns. They have a central intelligence coordinating their attacks. If we could locate and destroy it, the entire swarm might collapse." "Have you found it?" Lisa asked. "Not yet, but we are getting closer." The weeks passed, and the galaxy burned. The Confederation threw fleet after fleet against the Hollow, and fleet after fleet was destroyed. The proud crystal ships of the shattered like glass. The telepathic warriors of the found their powers useless against creatures that had no minds to read. Even the mighty beings of living stone who had never known defeat fell before the endless tide. On the human carrier Resolute, Captain Amy stood on the observation deck and watched the stars. Behind her, the hidden fleet waited in the darkness of an unnamed nebula. 300 ships, 40,000 soldiers, everything humanity had built in 60 years of secret preparation. Lieutenant Ben Cooper approached her with a tablet. "Captain, we have received word from Earth. The Council has sent its 19th formal request for assistance." Amy did not turn around. "What did the Admiral say?" "She said we hold position. The time is not right." Amy closed her eyes. She had joined the fleet 10 years ago, knowing full well that her entire career might be spent waiting for a battle that never came. Now that battle was raging across the galaxy, and she was ordered to watch. "How many dead?" she asked quietly. Ben hesitated. "Current estimates suggest 14 billion casualties across all species, 43 worlds destroyed or consumed. The Confederation has lost approximately 60% of its combined military strength." 14 billion. The number was too large to comprehend. 14 billion lives ended by creatures that felt nothing, wanted nothing except to feed and spread. Amy thought of the council chamber where humanity had been laughed at. She thought of the High Arbiter's dismissive words. She thought of how small and weak and useless they had made her people feel. "The Confederation is preparing a last stand at Station," Ben continued. 12 fleets from 8 species. It will be the largest military engagement in galactic history. If they lose, there will be nothing left to stop the Hollow from reaching the core worlds. Amy turned to face him. "When?" 3 days. She looked at the fleet surrounding her ship, every vessel dark, every soldier ready, every weapon loaded and waiting. For 60 years, humanity had prepared for this moment, not for glory, not for revenge, but because someone had to stand against the darkness, and humanity had decided long ago that they would be the ones to do it. "Send a message to the Admiral," Amy said. "Tell her the fleet is ready. We await her command." Ben saluted and left. Amy turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there, the Hollow was moving toward Station. Somewhere out there, the species that had mocked humanity were preparing to die. They did not know that help was coming. They did not know that the primitives they had dismissed were about to change everything. Amy thought about what Lisa had told her years ago when she first joined Project Silence. Humanity does not announce itself. Humanity does not boast or threaten or demand attention. When the moment comes, humanity acts. And when we act, the universe remembers. 3 days. In 3 days, humanity would finally show the galaxy what they had been hiding, and they would do it in complete silence. Amy squared her shoulders and headed for the bridge. There was work to be done. In the darkness between stars, the human fleet began to move. No signals were sent. No announcements were made. 300 ships slipped through space like ghosts, invisible to every sensor in the galaxy, heading toward a battle that would decide the fate of everything that lived. The Council had laughed at humanity. They would not be laughing much longer. Station hung in space like a jewel against the black void. It was the largest structure ever built by the Confederation, a habitat ring that housed 4 billion beings from every species in the Alliance. For 10,000 years it had stood as a symbol of galactic unity. Now it was about to become a graveyard. High Arbiter stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Crystal Spear. Around him floated the combined might of the Confederation, 12 fleets, 2,000 warships, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. It should have been enough to make any enemy pause. But the Hollow did not pause. They did not negotiate or retreat or show fear. They simply came, wave after wave after wave, blotting out the stars themselves with their numbers. "They will reach firing range in 15 minutes, reported Admiral. a warrior whose stone hide bore the scars of 100 battles. My ships will form the front line. Nodded slowly. All fleets to attack formation. We hold this line or we die. There is nowhere left to retreat. The battle began with fire and thunder. The dreadnoughts unleashed weapons that could crack moons, and thousands of hollow creatures died in the first volley. But for every one that fell, 10 more took its place. The swarm was endless, a tide of metal and flesh that absorbed punishment and kept coming. The crystal ships tried to create barriers of focused light, but the hollow adapted within minutes. Their bioarmor shifted to absorb the energy instead of reflecting it. They reached out with their telepathic powers, trying to find some weakness, some vulnerability to exploit. They found only hunger and emptiness and a cold purpose that felt like staring into the void itself. 1 hour into the battle, the Confederation had lost 300 ships. 2 hours in, the number doubled. Admiral died when a hollow rammed directly into his flagship, tearing it apart from the inside. The fleet commander went silent, overwhelmed by the psychic screams of millions dying around him. Watched his forces crumble and felt something he had not experienced in 3,000 years: despair. High Arbiter, his aide said, voice trembling. We cannot hold, we must order a retreat. Retreat to where? Asked quietly. There is nothing behind us but the core worlds. If we fall here, everything falls. He looked at the tactical display. The hollow were everywhere, surrounding the station, cutting off escape routes, systematically destroying everything in their path. His ships were dying. His people were dying. The galaxy itself was dying. And then something impossible happened. The sensors detected contacts appearing from nowhere. Not 1 or 2, but hundreds. Ships that had not been there a moment before, already in perfect attack position, already targeting the hollow with weapons the Confederation had never seen. What is this? Demanded. Before anyone could answer, the newcomers opened fire. Beams of focused energy cut through hollow armor like it was paper. Missiles that seemed to think for themselves tracked down the enemy's command nodes and detonated inside them. The swarm's cohesion shattered as their coordination collapsed. On the carrier Resolute, Captain Amy stood at the center of her bridge, her voice calm and clear. All wings execute Pattern 7. Containment priority. Nothing escapes. Lieutenant Ben Cooper worked his console with practiced efficiency. The Hollow are attempting to regroup. Their central intelligence is trying to establish new command nodes. Find them and destroy them, Amy ordered. Marine teams begin boarding operations on primary targets. Throughout the fleet, drop ships launched toward the largest Hollow vessels. Each ship carried soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. They wore armor that made them invisible to Hollow sensors. They carried weapons designed specifically to kill these creatures. And they moved in complete silence, communicating only through hand signals and practice coordination. Sergeant Jake led his squad into the organic corridors of a Hollow command ship. The walls pulsed with alien life, and creatures moved in the darkness around them. His team did not speak. They did not need to. Years of training had made them function as a single organism, each member knowing exactly what the others would do. A Hollow warrior appeared from a side passage. Jake killed it with 2 shots to its neural cluster before it could make a sound. His team moved on, deeper into the ship, toward the central processing node that gave this vessel its purpose. They found it in a chamber filled with organic cables and pulsing membranes. The node was a mass of tissue and metal, alive in a way that made human senses recoil. Jake did not hesitate. He planted the charges and led his team out at a sprint. 30 seconds later, the entire ship went dark. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out again and again. Human Marines boarded Hollow vessels and destroyed them from within. Human ships cut through the swarm with weapons and tactics the enemy could not anticipate. Human pilots flew with precision that seemed impossible, always knowing where the enemy would be before they got there. High Arbiter stared at his displays, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. The hollow that had been overwhelming his forces were now being systematically exterminated. The tide of battle had turned completely in less than an hour. "Who are they?" whispered. Looked at the identification signals finally appearing on his sensors. He read them once, then again, then a third time. "Humans," he said, his voice barely audible. "They are humans." A communication request appeared on his console. He accepted it with hands that would not stop shaking. Admiral Lisa Warren looked at him through the screen. Her face showed no emotion, no triumph, no anger, no satisfaction at seeing those who had mocked her species now depending on them for survival. "High Arbiter," she said simply. "This is the first of 12 battle groups. The rest are en route to your other contested systems. We will discuss terms when the fighting is done." The channel closed before it could respond. Around station, the battle continued, but it was no longer a desperate last stand. It was a systematic destruction of an enemy that had finally met something it could not consume. The humans moved through the hollow like death itself, silent and unstoppable and utterly without mercy. By the time it was over, not a single hollow creature remained alive within 3 light years of the station. The human fleet had not lost a single ship. Captain Amy stood on her observation deck and looked at the debris field that had once been an unstoppable swarm. Ben Cooper approached her quietly. "Captain, the Confederation commanders are requesting communication. They want to thank us, to understand how we did this." Amy shook her head slowly. "Not yet. There is still work to do. The hollow main swarm is still out there. This was just the beginning." She turned back to her bridge, ready to give the orders that would take her fleet deeper into the war. Humanity had revealed itself at last, but the silence remained. They had not come for gratitude or recognition. They had come to do a job. And the job was far from finished. The war against the Hollow lasted 9 more months. Humanity fought in every theater, on every front, in every dark corner of the galaxy where the swarm had spread its tendrils. They came without warning and left without celebration. They saved worlds that had never heard of Earth and protected species that had mocked humanity's very existence. And through it all, they maintained their silence. Captain Amy lost count of the battles after the first 100. Her ship, the Resolute, became a legend among Confederation survivors. They called it the Ghost Ship because it appeared from nowhere, fought with terrible efficiency, and vanished before anyone could offer thanks. Amy never corrected them. She simply moved on to the next fight. Sergeant Jake died on a hollow hive ship above the. He and his squad destroyed the central intelligence node that controlled 40% of the remaining swarm. The explosion killed them all, but it saved 3 billion telepaths who had hidden behind shields that were failing by the minute. They sang songs of mourning for weeks, though they never learned his name. Doctor worked without sleep for the final 3 months of the war. His team finally located the primary hollow consciousness, a vast organism floating in the space between galaxies. Admiral Lisa Warren led the final assault herself, commanding from the bridge of the carrier Defiance. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Hollow were truly extinct for the first time in their million-year existence. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the war was over. The Galactic Council convened 1 month later. The chamber on Velar Prime looked the same as it had 3 years before, but everything else had changed. The seats that had once held laughing delegates now held silent survivors. Species that had lost billions looked at each other with eyes that had seen too much. And at the center of it all, waiting at the podium, stood the human delegation. Ambassador Daniel Porter wore the same simple gray uniform he had worn at his first appearance. Beside him stood Kate, her face carrying new lines that had not been there before. Sam stood on his other side, quiet as always. Behind them, visible through the chamber's massive windows, hung a human carrier, a reminder that could not be ignored. High Arbiter rose from his seat. He was diminished somehow, his crystal form less brilliant than it had been. The war had taken something from him that could not be replaced. "The Council recognizes the delegation from Earth," he said. His voice no longer rang with authority. It simply existed, tired and humbled and small. Daniel stepped forward and looked out at the assembled species. He saw the, reduced to a fraction of their former numbers. He saw the, still healing from psychic wounds that might never fully close. He saw the proud warriors who now understood what it meant to be helpless. He saw 100 other species, each one owing their survival to the primitives they had dismissed. "High Arbiter, distinguished representatives." Daniel paused, letting the silence stretch. "3 years ago, I stood in this chamber and asked for humanity to be admitted to the Galactic Confederation. You refused. You called us primitive. You called us weak. You laughed at the idea that we could offer anything of value." No one moved. No one spoke. "You were wrong," Daniel continued. "Not because we proved to be stronger than you expected. Not because we built weapons you could not imagine. You were wrong because you measured value by the wrong standards. You looked at humanity and saw only what we lacked. You did not see what we possessed." He took a breath and looked at Kate. She nodded slightly. "Humanity is young. Humanity is fragile. Humanity comes from a single world on the edge of the galaxy. All of these things are true. But humanity also has something that none of your species seem to understand. We have unity. Not the unity of shared minds or identical bodies. Something deeper. When one of us faces darkness, all of us stand together. When the universe threatens our survival, we do not retreat behind barriers and hope the storm passes us by. We walk into the storm and we fight." He stepped closer to the edge of the podium. 60 years ago, when your scouts first visited our world, our leaders saw how the Confederation worked. They saw that the strong dominated the weak. They saw that primitive species were exploited and dismissed, and they made a choice. They chose to be underestimated. They chose to appear weak while building strength in secret, not because we wanted to deceive you, because we knew that someday a darkness would come that threatened everyone, and when that day arrived, we wanted to be ready. Spoke for the first time. You could have revealed yourselves sooner. You could have joined the war before billions died. Daniel nodded. We could have. We discussed it endlessly. The weight of those lives will stay with us forever. But we also knew something you did not. We knew that if we revealed ourselves too soon, you would have seen us as a threat instead of an ally. You would have turned your fleets against us instead of the Hollow. We waited until the moment when saving you was more important than protecting ourselves. We waited until there was no choice but to trust each other. Kate stepped forward. We did not come here for gratitude. We did not fight for recognition or reward. We fought because the galaxy was worth saving. Every species in this chamber, no matter what they thought of us, deserved the chance to survive. That is what humanity believes. That is who we are. Sam spoke last. His voice was soft, but it carried through the silent chamber. We are not asking you to fear us. We are not asking you to worship us or follow our commands. We are asking only for what we asked 3 years ago, a seat at the table, nothing more, nothing less. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Looked around the chamber, seeing the faces of species who had nearly been extinguished. Then he bowed his head. The matter is brought to vote. All those in favor of granting humanity full membership in the Galactic Confederation. Every hand, appendage, and tentacle in the chamber rose. The vote was unanimous. Daniel felt Kate's hand touch his shoulder. He felt Sam exhale beside him. He felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight for 3 years. "The motion carries," said. "Humanity is hereby recognized as a full member of the Galactic Confederation, with all rights and responsibilities that entails." Daniel bowed his head slightly. "We thank the Council for its consideration." As the human delegation turned to leave, something unexpected happened. High Arbiter spoke again. "Ambassador Porter." Daniel stopped and turned. Seemed to struggle with something. Then he spoke words that had never been uttered by a high arbiter in 10,000 years of recorded history. On behalf of the Galactic Council and all species represented here, I offer my personal apology for the way you were received 3 years ago. We were arrogant and blind. You deserved better. Daniel looked at the crystal being who had once dismissed humanity as insects. He thought about the laughter that had followed him out of this chamber. He thought about the soldiers who had died in silence, never asking for recognition. He thought about what it meant to be human. High Arbiter, he said quietly, we do not need your apology. We never did. We only needed you to understand one thing. What is that? Daniel smiled just a little. The loudest voice in the room is rarely the most dangerous one. Remember that. It might save your lives again someday. He turned and walked out of the chamber. This time there was no laughter. There was only silence. Respectful, humbled, and perhaps just a little afraid. And that was exactly how humanity wanted it. Outside, the stars burned cold and eternal. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed. Nothing would ever be the same again. But somewhere in the darkness, a quiet species continued on as they always had. They did not boast. They did not demand attention. They simply lived and worked and prepared for whatever came next. Because that was who they were. That was who they had always been. The ones who walked forth in complete silence.